Hi everyone, this is Professor Ellis with week 7 of Specialized Communications for Technology Students. That's English 1133 OL 96 Fall 2021. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm sorry if my voice is a little weaker today. I'm a little under the weather, but we have a lot of stuff to go over, and so I'm going to hold it together and carry us through this. So please make sure I have your undivided attention for this week's lecture. So that we can get through everything that'll keep us moving forward. But before we get into today's lecture, just want to remind everyone that there are multiple ways to get in touch with me if you ever have questions about the class. First off, my email address, jellis@citytech.cuny.edu. That's going to be very important for this week's homework assignment, which I'll talk about later. Also, remember I have office hours every Wednesday from 3 to 5 p.m. There's a link to the Google Hangouts where I hold office hours on the left-hand side of our Open Lab course site. Just to kind of remind you, we'll zip over there. Over here, contact Professor Ellis. You see that link for Google Hangouts. Or you can go to the syllabus, linked right there. And at the very top, under Contact and Office Hours, is also a link. So multiple ways to get to the office hours. And if you can't make it to my Wednesday's office hours, all you got to do is send me an email letting me know what your availability is for the next week. Because I have a busy schedule outside of teaching, lots of meetings every week. And so by you letting me know when you're available, I can find a time that will accommodate both of our schedules. And I'll get back to you and say, hey, this is the time it looks like we can both meet. That saves us a lot of back and forth email exchanges if you just let me know your availability up front. And then, of course, also just to give a shout out again to my blog, dynamicsubspace.net. There's a lot of interesting things on there that might be beneficial for as examples in our class, but also just to see some of the fun things that I occasionally work on, both professionally and also as far as my hobbies are concerned, which may overlap with some of your interests in the class. Now, week 7. Let's go over a brief review of where we were in week 6. So last week I showed you how to submit project 1 using the Dropbox file request. That's all linked on our Open Lab site. If I go back over to our Open Lab site just to briefly show you, underneath the lecture for week 6, after you watch the lecture, obviously you need to know what's going on in the class and lecture before you attempt to do anything that I ever write on Open Lab, okay? But once you've watched the lecture, you see the link right there that'll take you to the Dropbox page where you can add your files. And again, I give you some extra instructions there that I went over in the lecture. So I'm trying to layer on multiple ways to make sure you don't miss anything. And then after you've named your files according to the instructions, then you can either drag your files into this little box or click on Add Files to add them from your computer. And last week also introduced Project 2, your research-based technical report. And remember, the technical report is a huge chunk of your grade in the class. If I go over to our syllabus on our Open Lab course site and go down to grade distribution, Project 2, research-based technical reports, 30% of your grade. Now, the cool thing about this project is that this is really an opportunity for you to learn more about what your either major is or topic in your major, or your specialization for those of you that are in the professional technical writing major. The idea here is that you investigate a technical or scientific topic and you're going to write a technical report, in this case what we might term a background technical report, on the subject that you select for your project. So you want to make sure that whatever you pick is obviously focused on what your major or your specialization is, so that you're letting this project, which we're going to go over how to write the document, which is what you need to be getting out of our class, but it's going to serve double duty in that it allows you to learn more about something that should be of interest and importance to you not only for your major, but also for your career once you graduate from City Tech. This is an opportunity for you to get more out of your experience at City Tech using the research resources that I'll guide you how to use using the library and other places, so that you're gaining more knowledge than what you would simply by taking a class in your major. That this is self-motivated learning that's going to allow you to dive into the topic that you've selected in a way that you don't really always get to do in your major, where you're basically told, like, this is what we're working on, this is what you need to know, here's a test or an assignment based on that. This is something more free form, where you get to indulge your curiosity for learning. The Nobel Prize winning physicist Richard Feynman once talked about the pleasure of finding things out. That's what drove him to be a physicist, to want to understand how the universe works. Well, that same curiosity is what should drive all of us in whatever pursuit that we have. That there's a pleasure of finding things out. And this project I've designed to indulge that. It should be something that you want to learn something more about. But in order for it to serve that double duty, pick something, again, that is relevant to what it is you're studying at City Tech, what your career is going to be about, so that it's serving these multiple purposes, multiple functions that's going to help you out in the long run. Because everything in our class, just like with the job application portfolio that you just finished, I want these things to be beneficial and helpful to you once you get out of my class. That the things that we create inside of our class are not just meant to be something to get you a grade. They're things that are meant to enable your learning in your major, and then eventually to help you start the career that you're working towards, right? So use that spirit in the projects that we're working on now, the technical report, and then eventually the research presentation, which is going to be based on your technical report. So the technical report, again, is 30% of your grade. And we went over the basics of that in our last class. And then to begin your research into the technical report, the weekly writing assignment last week was that research expedition, where I sent you off to Academic Search Complete by EBSCO through the library's website to simply use your topic as a search term to find some articles, 10 articles that might be relevant, might be useful to your research. You didn't have to read them. What I wanted you primarily to do was practice using the citation tool for building a list of resources that you might use in your eventual research based technical report. Really just to give you some practice using Academic Search Complete, their citation tool, and also to begin seeing what kind of research is out there. Now we're going to open that up a little bit broader this week to help lay a foundation for your knowledge on the topic, which will fuel your further research in the topic for your research report. So this week, looking ahead, we're going to build on that initial research and look at other sources. And then for this week's weekly writing assignment, you'll write a memo that's basically a brief history on your topic. And this writing that you do for the weekly writing assignment, you may find ways to incorporate into your technical report. Maybe not verbatim, but at least you're going to have some words that you might be able to recycle. But more importantly, the ideas you express in this memo will be beneficial to helping you do more research in these other sources that we talk about during today's class. And then also there's going to be a homework assignment. The homework assignment is really going to be based on some of the things that we look at during today's class in David McMurray's online technical writing textbook, some examples of technical reports. to work on an outline for your project. And so basically with this homework assignment, you're going to go back and look at these examples we talk about during class and think about what is an appropriate outline for your technical report. You're going to email that outline along with your topic to me so that I can reply with some feedback, some suggestions to help you streamline that outline into an appropriate one for your report. Because what you're going to find is I can't give you a single outline that's going to be applicable to every topic that each student is working on in class. So what we need to do together is have you look at some examples, have you do the cognitive work of thinking which of these might apply, or what things might I borrow from one and from another to create an outline that's appropriate to my topic. Let your professor, me, see that, and then I'll give you some feedback so we can give each student in the class a good outline to really begin working from for the research report. So none of the work that you're doing now is just busy work. All of these things are going to be building up to allowing you to write the best possible technical report you can in the class. That's the way I've designed these assignments as stepping stones, building up to getting a technical report done in the class. So let's go ahead and begin taking a look at this. Okay, so just again, a little bit of review real quick on the research-based technical report. So what again is a technical report? It focuses on scientific or technological topics. What you need to be thinking about are processes, like how things might get made, certain developments, like how something came to be, like how was the microprocessor invented, or what is the history of processors leading up to today's multi-core, multi-threaded computer microprocessors. And also results if you're doing your own primary research into scientific experiment or trials of a certain kind of technology or invention. But that's not the purpose for our class. I'm not wanting to do any of that kind of primary research. Now, in general, technical reports are supported by primary, meaning like you're doing your own experiments type research, and or secondary research. The secondary research is what we're using for your technical reports. Secondary research are the types of reports that have been done by others. You're not doing it directly. You're receiving it essentially secondhand. But for our purposes, that's perfectly fine because we're just practicing with writing the technical reports. I'm not grading you on having done the actual experimentation like you might do when you're in the workplace and creating that primary research. Now, technical reports are presented or presenting information in a clear, professional, and straightforward manner. They don't use the first person singular subjective I, okay? They're all written in a third person perspective about the topics that you're writing about. They use established conventions and layouts and professional style, and in this case we're going to be using the APA, American Psychological Association's format for all of your quotes and all of your bibliographic citations and references at the end of the document. We're going to be also relying on David McMurray's online technical writing manual or textbook for the general layout of your technical report. And we'll talk about that more in a future lecture. But just to kind of give you a heads up, and what we've already looked at, in previous homework assignments, I had you look at the technical report section of his textbook. That should give you an idea about what they should look like. So there shouldn't be a question at this point about that until you've looked at those things, and of course you can ask me questions about what you read. Now, let's take a look at some examples of these technical reports before we get into what you'll be working on this week with your weekly writing assignment and the homework assignment. And I'll give you a link directly to this. There we go. This is on David McMurray's online technical writing textbook, and he gives us some examples here, formal technical reports. A guide to Navajo weaving, DVD technology and applications, cerebral palsy and its treatments, effects of increased atmospheric carbon dioxide, and report on light water nuclear reactors. So a wide range of different types of topics, everything from textiles to entertainment technology to health sciences and biology to ecological issues, as well as nuclear reactors like nuclear science, physics, chemistry, all of those things wrapped up there. So again, the topic that you select for your technical report just needs to be of a technical or scientific nature, relevant to what your major is or what your specialization is in your major. So let's take a look at each of these in turn, just to get a sense of how they're laid out. And what we can do to see how they're laid out is simply look at their table of contents. As you know from having looked at the layout and the layout on David McMurray's online technical writing textbook, is that the technical report should begin with a letter of transmittal. Here's our letter of transmittal there. And then we have a table of contents. Now, this is for the Navajo weaving technical report. And so it begins with a list of figures and graphics, and then we get into an introduction. Here we see in the introduction there's a section on origins of Navajo weaving, and there's also the legend of Spider Woman, which must have some relevance to that origin and history of Navajo weaving. Now, your topic might have nothing to do with legends, but there might be a history there that you need to discuss. Some background that's needed for your reader to understand the specific topic that you're writing about in your technical manual. These things would more than likely go in your introduction. Now, after that introduction, we can see that there's a large section on Navajo rug styles. Then there's a section on looms. Looms are the equipment that you would use for weaving that holds together all the strands of yarn as you build up your rug. And then a huge section on tools and supplies. So these are the tools and supplies that you use with the loom to create one of these types of rugs. Then there's a large section on Navajo weaving home studio. This is really the setting, the space that you would use for creating one of these types of rugs. And they talk about everything from work surface, what kind of lighting is appropriate so that, like, obviously you can see what you're doing, and that the light creates the reflection and colors that the artist needs to see, the weaver needs to see, in order to accurately create the rug that they're weaving. How you sit, I mean, really getting into the bare bones nitty gritty of how someone creates these types of rugs. Storage, types of shelves, mailing tubes, project baskets, and then some actual instruction information, such as workshops and classes. Weaving and Beauty Navajo Rug Weavers would be two types of workshops and classes that they write about. And then a Navajo weaving reference library. So these would be sources that they probably would have created like a working bibliography on to help readers of this technical report get more background and knowledge if they wanted to become weavers themselves. And then they have a section called sources, which we would call references for our purposes, at the very end of their document. And this would be anything that they cited and quoted from in the rest of the technical report. So you, on your own, will want to go look at these examples that we're going to be discussing, including this one on Navajo weaving. And you can browse through. I'm not expecting you to read every page of these example reports, but browsing them and seeing how they're laid out, how they combine writing with images. And if you think back to our very first lecture in the class, there was an acronym that I shared with you all. Do you remember what that is? It's WOVEN, W-O-V-E-N, and it stands for written, oral, visual, electronic, and nonverbal. These are modalities that we use to communicate information to others. And what's cool is that we can use these modalities together in strategic ways to improve our communications so that they're more engaging, so that people pay more attention to them, so that the knowledge that we're trying to impart and the information that we're trying to impart to our audience gets remembered and used by the audience that our communications are intended for. So what you can be thinking about right now for your own technical report is how to use these modalities, written, oral, visual, electronic, and nonverbal, to create communications, to create deliverables, the documents that we're making, that are more impactful, that are going to engage your readers in a stronger way than if you just use one modality by itself. Now, I'll talk in a future lecture more about the types of elements that you might include in your technical report, like images. But one of the qualifications I need to be very clear with you about is that any images that you use in your documents have to be created by you. So that means if you want to include any types of illustrations or pictures, you have to create them yourself. That means if you want a photograph to include, that photograph has to be taken by you. If you want to include a screenshot of maybe a piece of software or an example of a website, you have to create that screenshot yourself. If you want to include an illustration, you have to draw it yourself. Whether it be by hand on paper, then you scan it or take a photo of it, or you draw it using different types of computer illustration software. The idea here is that your intentionality, meaning like the choices and your intention behind the images that you might use, are as strong as the writing itself, which is very intentional on your part. You choose what writing to create in it for your documents, right? Well, the same has to be true for the images. You don't want to go off and just do a Google image search and take whatever someone else's intentions were as your own for the images that you include. What I want to see is that you are thinking about how images should be created and how they should be incorporated in order to make impressive documents. Now, I don't want anybody to freak out. I'm not going to be grading any of those on artistic elements. What I'll be grading any images that you might use in your document is based on your intentionality and their appropriateness. Are they responding to the needs of your audience? Are they responding to what you wrote in your document? Because if we're going to be thinking about how woven is a layering and a layering of different modalities to improve the effectiveness of your communication, well, any image that you use has to support the writing that you do. They have to work together. You don't just put a picture in for the hell of it. You put the picture in because it's supporting your writing, and your writing is supporting the picture, okay? But we'll talk more about that later. I just want to give you a taste of that right now as we're looking at these examples. Let's next take a look at this second example, DVD technology and applications. So here, again, we begin with the letter of transmittal. And this one has a nice title page, which you'll also be including in yours, and we'll talk about that more as we get closer to actually finalizing your document for submission in the class. But here we get to the table of contents. And again, the table of contents essentially is your outline. And an outline is super important for being able to create an effective and well-written technical report, because it's your plan. It's your plan of action. You have a list of topics underneath the main topic you're working on, and you basically plug and chug. You fill out each of those sections to build up to your final technical report. So this one's on DVD technology. And so you can see here we have a list of figures. This person wrote an abstract. The abstract is something you write after you're completed that is basically a summary of your overall technical report. The abstract allows someone to read it and figure out if they need to read the rest of your document. Like, is it something that they need to know about? And that abstract is vitally important to that. And I'll explain how to write those later on in a couple of weeks, after you've had a chance to actually begin working on your technical report. Because again, this comes last, even though it's at the beginning of your document. You can't write an abstract until you've really written the rest of your document. I mean, if you want to write an effective abstract that's on point, you need to have the rest of your document completed first. But now for today's lesson, what we're focusing on is this outline that's contained within the table of contents. Again, we start with an introduction. Introduction is explaining what this technical report is about. What is like the very basics of the background that a reader needs to know before delving into the rest of the technical report. We have a section on DVD technology overview. You can see the person wrote a development of DVD technology. That's the history of how it came to be. A comparison between CD-ROM and DVD technology. So if your topic has other competing technologies or relevant technologies that maybe came before it, you might want to include in your outline a comparison to that technology. And now this person included that comparison under this section, DVD technology overview, at the beginning of the document. You'll see when we look a little bit later that there's other ways we can include that in our outline. Okay, and that's why we can learn from these examples to kind of think in our own minds, what is the best way for me to do this for my project? Because your project is very unique. It's something that we need to work together on to develop a good outline that will satisfy the requirements of the project, while also giving you a good plan going forward for you to write your technical report. And that's why for this week's homework, you're going to develop an outline, email it to me so I can give you some feedback on that right away. Now, after that comparison, you can see this person wrote about physical characteristics of these things, the data structure characteristics, and the operating characteristics. So really drilling down into all the particulars of what DVD technology is, like how its physical characteristics of a disk, how it's the data is encoded on it, the data structure that's used for the data that's written on it, and then the operating characteristics, like how is it read, how is it written to, etc. Then we next see a large section on construction of the DVD. And here we get the DVD development process, everything up to building a master, I would think, the physical formatting, the glass mastering, metallization. This is the thing that's used to stamp the data on each DVD during its creation, the electroplating, molding, sputtering, bonding. And each of these are explained further down. So you can go down and read those if you're not familiar with what these terms mean. But what I think is useful for us today, thinking about your outline for your technical report is what kinds of details do you want to include for the topic that you've selected. And then closing out this section on construction of a DVD, there's a section on current DVD research, which is interesting because this research, I would think, must have something to do with how DVDs are made. Maybe new ways of making them, improvements to the process, etc. Depending on what kind of research you find when you're looking through the databases, looking through the ebooks in the library, you might find a new lead like this that you can add a section to one of your, a subsection basically, to a larger section of your outline to fill in some more details that you might not have known about when you're developing your outline. That's perfectly fine. That's the writing process at work, because even though you're going to write this outline now, you're going to give it to me for some peer review feedback. You're going to revise it based on my feedback. But while you're writing your actual technical report, you might find that there's something you should take out, or you might find there's something to put in based on your research. That's okay. That's the writing process at work. It's something that we can invoke and do at any point in the process. Okay? So don't be afraid to do that as you're writing your own technical report. Now, after this big section on construction of a DVD, there is a big section on DVD applications, a big section on DVD projected sales and revenues. So again, depending on the type of project you select, you might want to talk about the market that's related to your topic. So for example, if you're just simply talking about, like, you might have selected, like, say you're doing a technical report on the James Webb Space Telescope that's going to be launched later this year. Well, for that, because we're talking about scientific research using this very specialized piece of technology and equipment, there isn't going to be a market per se for that type of technology that you need to write about in your technical report. However, you can talk about how much it costs to build it, how much is it going to cost to launch it, those types of aspects to that topic. But now, if you're wanting to do a technical report on the private rocket industry, so here we're thinking about SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Atlantic with their offerings, then we can talk about projected sales and revenues of each of these players in the private rocket industry, private rocket launch industry, like in terms of how many launches each are projected to do over a certain time span, how much is their cost, how much are they charging for these launches, etc. So in that case, you would want to talk about the market per se for that particular topic. So two similar things, a launched space telescope and private rocket launch industries, but the way that we might talk about the money aspects are very different. Again, with the space telescope, we're talking about, like, how much is it costing, like, taxpayers to build this thing and to launch it. And with the space launch industry, then we're talking about markets. There's a market for these space launches, whether it be launching astronauts to the International Space Station, whether it be launching tourists into space, like you probably saw William Shatner go up on Blue Origin the other day. Here we're talking about there's competition between these different companies that are all offering similar kinds of rocket launches for whether it be governments or private industry to use. So then we can talk about things like sales and revenues for those companies. So again, think about like what your topic is and how it relates to what kinds of research you need to do to talk about these different aspects of it. And I'll also put this out there that even though in this past week's weekly writing assignment, I wanted you to write about and pick your topic, as you dive more into this outline process, if maybe it inspires you or gives you another idea for your topic, it's okay to change. And so when you, for this week's homework, when you email me your outline, you can let me know if you've changed your topic based on this additional thinking, this cognitive work that you're doing on the project. Now, after that sales and revenue section, then we can see there's a conclusion. And this conclusion wouldn't be like a summation of what came before it. What this type of conclusion will discuss are what's the future of this technology? What does this person see based on their research? The future of DVD is, this is something that was produced probably in the past, so they may have written about, I'm not sure, you have to look at the report, but they may have talked about how DVD technology would eventually be phased out by other competing technologies like Blu-ray, online streaming, etc. So the conclusion is not about what you've already written about. It's looking ahead and looking at the landscape of like how this technology might be used in the future, competing technologies that may cause it to phase out, etc. And then they included a section called information sources, but again, we're going to call that references in our technical report. Let's look at one more. I'm going to let you go through each of these in more detail on your own, but just for our purposes, let's go down to this report on light water nuclear reactors to see more of like a science technology report. So again, we start with a letter of transmittal. We have a title page. And then we get to our table of contents. So this is where we're really focusing again to get some ideas for your technical reports outline. So we see there's a section on list of figures. This would be like tables, kind of like little sections of a spreadsheet. List of figures would be like diagrams. The list of charts would be things like tables of figures and like small sections of a spreadsheet. We have an abstract. So again, the abstract we don't write until after we've completed the technical report, and that's like a summation, a summary of what the technical report is about. We have a section labeled introduction. You'll have something like that in yours. And then we get into these large sections: pressurized water reactors, boiling reactors. So here we have two different types of light water nuclear reactors. That's the topic of this report. And so this person divided their report into these two main sections of these different types of light water reactors. One that is called a pressurized water reactor and gives the acronym for that, PWR, and boiling water reactors, BWR. And so these constitute the two main topics that are being discussed underneath the larger umbrella term of light water nuclear reactors. Now, as underneath those two main sections, they wrote a section on safety measures. And within safety measures, there are different subsections that apply to pressurized water reactors and different measures that apply to boiling water reactors, because they work differently. So, of course, you're going to have different safety measures for each. And then for economic aspects, you can see here that the person combined the discussion for both of these in terms of the economic aspects. So they didn't have a section on the economic aspects of pressurized water reactors and a separate section for boiling water reactors. Their discussion is combined. And this is like using technical terms, bus bar costs, and operating capacity. And so you can scroll down and see what those things entail, what this person is discussing about these things in terms of these two types of light water nuclear reactors. And then they included, after the conclusion, again, the conclusion is looking ahead. It's not a summation of what you've already discussed. Here we have an appendix, and in the appendix is information sources. For yours, we can just have one section there called references, and that'll be your bibliographic references, ordered alphabetically by the first author's last name for each of those. So again, these all constitute examples. These 5 reports here that you can take a look at are examples that you can look at to get ideas for the outline of your technical report. And basically your outline is the main topics and subtopics that you think you should discuss in reference to the big topic, technical or scientific topic, that you selected for your technical report, using research through the library and other sources that we'll discuss today. So use these as an example to think like, okay, do I want to use a similar type of outline, or do I want to borrow something from one, borrow something from another one, and then create your own outline? And so why don't we go ahead and talk about, now we discuss those, this week's homework. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'll go over this again at the end of class. But basically, I want you to review the sample technical reports that we just looked at. I'll give you a link back to those on our Open Lab site. And in this one document I'm about to tell you to create, I want you to write what you think is the best outline for your topic. And then you're going to send an email, professional, polite email to me, jellis@citytech.cuny.edu, in which you state your selected topic, copy and paste just your outline into that email, and ask me for feedback on it. And then I'll reply to your email with some suggestions, like I'll say, this sounds great, or I may have some ideas that can help you make it a little bit better. And then what we kind of finalize on, you'll want to copy and paste back in to your technical report document and use that as the outline for the technical report that you write. So again, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So why don't we talk about the specific documents that I want you to create in Google Docs to use for your project in our class. Because I mentioned in our last week we're going to be using Google Docs because I want to give you some more practical experience about how to use some of the tools that are built into it, and also how it allows us to create web-facing documents that we can link to from our Open Lab site. So it's going to give you more experience using Google Docs and more experience using Open Lab /WordPress. So first off, I want you to create in your own Google Docs, and if you're not familiar with this, the easiest way always to work with anything in Google Docs is simply to go to drive.google.com. And you log in with, like if you already have a Gmail account, you just log in with your Gmail username and password and you're there. Now it's in Google Drive that you can create, when I click on add over here, all these different types of things. You can create a folder, you can upload files from your computer, you can upload folders of documents from your computer, but for us, we're going to focus on creating Google Docs. But you can also see you can create spreadsheets, PowerPoint type slides, which we'll talk about when we get to the third project in the class, your presentation. You can create Google Forms to collect information from people. You can create drawings. You can create your own maps that have like your own, like you can point out particular places and add notes to Google Maps. You can create websites and other things. But what we're focusing on right now are Google Docs. So we're going to be using Google Docs first. And again, make sure you have your notebook out, so like you're making notes on this stuff that we're talking about, so you don't miss anything. First, you're going to create one document, and I want you to name it ENG1133 Research Database. Remember, just like we created your job search database of all the stuff about yourself for your resume and your job application letter, where we're going to create a new file that we're going to be using as your research database for the technical report. So if I go to Google Drive, I just click New, click on Google Docs, and it creates this new document. And you see in the upper left-hand corner, that's where we can click and give this a name. So I want to name this English 1133 Research Database. If you already had, if maybe you just named your research database for the job application project, that you can add more details of this, like how about technical report research database. That's fine. I'm not going to be looking at this document. This document is for your benefit to collect all of your research that you do on the technical report project. So it's very important to have a document like this that is always being saved on Google Docs online, so you never lose it, right? And that you can use this to collect together all your notes, all your quotes, all your bibliographic information, links that take you back to some of the files or web pages that you find online that are relevant that you want to go back to. So this will be a living document that you keep adding to and that you will leave open when you begin working on your technical report. You're like going back and forth, like looking at your notes and finding things that you want to copy and paste into your technical report that you quote, give citations for, in-text citations, and that you're going to reference at the end of your document. And we'll go into more detail about how to do that in a future lecture. Now, we create that document, and so I add here at the beginning, keep a section labeled keywords that you can add to and change throughout your research. So I'm going to go back over to this document and keywords. Keywords are the terms that you use when you are doing research. Whenever you plug in your keywords, when you're using Google, when you use Wikipedia, when you use the library's databases, when you search for ebooks in the library, these keywords are what are relevant to finding sources relevant to your technical report topic. So like, let's say I'm doing a technical report on x86 processors. Well, that's one of my keywords. Intel will be a keyword. I might also include things like 8088, 82, 86, 83, 86, 84, 86, Pentium. All of these things might be keywords that I can use in my searches. I might include like microprocessor as a keyword. I might include personal computer, CPU, just simply processor. I will use combinations of these different keywords. Like, I don't put them all in at once, okay, because that may eliminate or like really narrow down my sources whenever I search for research that I want to read and use in my technical report. But combinations, 1, 2, maybe 3 of these together might yield a source that I'll want to read and include in my research. You get to build your own list of keywords, and this week's weekly writing assignment will help you with that, because you're going to be doing some background research reading about your topic from sources you will not actually quote from in your research, but that will be beneficial to your thinking and understanding of the topic that you've selected. That basic learning about your topic will help you generate a list of keywords that you can begin with, and as you do more research, you're going to find new keywords, and you might also decide to eliminate some of your keywords and focus on just a certain key number of them in your research. Now, after you've done that, you can see here I write, copy your citations from last week's weekly writing assignment into this document. So remember, last week's weekly writing assignment, at the end of it, I asked you to include 10 sources that you found through Academic Source Complete by EBSCO. Just copy those from the document that you created for last week's weekly writing assignment and paste them into this document. So I'll skip down a couple of lines and paste them. If any of those sources might be something you want to go back and look at, then between each of those, then you can add your notes. So for example, if I have a reference citation, underneath it I'll include quotes, in-text citation using APA format, my own written notes discussing the quote, right? And then maybe I'll have another quote, my own words, etc. And I'll skip down a few lines, and then I'll have my next reference citation. Now, what I'm doing here is here's my bibliographic entry for that particular source. Underneath it, I include quotes, and I include in parentheses after any in-text citation information, like the page number, for example, that source comes from. And then after the quote, I would want to write my own words about what that quote is saying, maybe why that quote is relevant, and all of this, these quotes and those words that I write here in my research database, guess what? I can copy those into my actual technical report later on. So again, none of this work is wasted, but this work of collecting together your research is what enables you to write a strong technical report, because you need to do the investigation. You need to investigate the topic you've selected in order to be able to say anything about what it is, what its history is, and what you do with it, what is its market like, etc. This research database document is where you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting of your technical report. And this is where you collect together all of your research that you will later use in the technical report. Now, the main thing here is to get as much into your research database as you can as you're reviewing your different sources you find through the databases, through the library's website, etc. And then in a future lecture, I'll go into more detail about how to do the APA formatted in-text citations so that everybody's up to speed on how that works. If you're already familiar with like MLA from like your 1101 and 1121 classes, really we're just going to be modifying that in some very important ways, but key ways that I need to go over with you. But for right now, if you include the bibliographic information, names of authors, titles of the article, where it was published, volume, issue number, date, page numbers, all the stuff that you should already have experience with doing before in a writing class and writing a research paper, we can reformat those for APA together in a future lecture. So right now, I want you to begin collecting this information in your research database so that we can use it later on. Now again, as I said last week, you may not use all of those sources that you included in your weekly writing assignment last week. That's fine. Just copy and paste them into your research database, and they'll be there if you need them. If you don't need them, that's fine too, okay? Again, the research database document is for your benefit. And you can see here that I say, keep notes in your English, your ENG1133 research database document. Always record bibliographic information, a link to the source, and put quotes around anything you copy from a source so that you can always easily distinguish a quote from your own writing and notes. That's very important. Always put quotes around anything that you're taking from one of the sources you find so you can always understand that's from that document. I didn't write that. And that way you never accidentally plagiarize a source. Additionally, as you're using the databases, as you're using the library's resources, make sure that you download and save anything you come across. Don't just read something in your web browser and then expect to go back and look at it again later. If you're able to download it, if there's an icon for downloading a PDF or an HTML file to your computer, download it and save it somewhere. You can actually even upload those documents to Google Drive and save them there. That way you always have access to them and you're not always having to hunt things down again later. It's wasting time. You want to save yourself as much time as possible, so save any of those documents that you might look at again later on. Now that's the first part. The second thing I want you to do with Google Docs is create a second document named English 1133 Technical Report. So here I go back over to Google Drive, New, Google Doc, and this one I'm going to call ENG 1133 Technical Report. Now we're going to change that title later, but for right now this allows you to understand that this is for our class and that this is your technical report document. And it's in this technical report document, the very first thing that I want you to work on for your homework this week is to write an outline for your technical report using the examples in David McMurray's online technical writing textbook as models. Okay, so again, those models give you ideas and then you write your outline underneath that. We can start with first, introduction. 2, how about background on your topic. 3, we might have one specific aspect, which you need to spell out. Don't write one specific aspect in your outline. One specific aspect of your topic. 4, another specific aspect of your topic. We could talk about, like, economic or market issues involving your topic. Involving. Then 6, this will be our conclusion, and we'll have references after that, and we will write abstract before that. So this is the body of your document, and then we also want to add abstract and references as bookends, meaning beginning and end of your document. Now, what you come up with for your outline is going to be different than this, more than likely. This is just like a very generic example of what you want to include in your technical report. Because again, your technical report, you're diving into and investigating and learning about that topic that you've selected for this project. Use those examples on David McMurray's online technical writing textbook as models. Get ideas from them about what you should or should not include in your project. All right, so we've done that. So we have 2 documents, and again, this document that we just worked on, this is where you will eventually write your project deliverable. But for this week, after you've written your outline, just right-click on it, copy it, and you're going to paste that into an email to me, jellis@citytech.cuny.edu. Write me a short, brief, professional email saying, Professor Ellis, here's my outline for my technical project on topic X. Let me know what your topic is again. Paste your outline, and then at the end say, when you have some time, please give me your feedback on my outline. Sincerely, your name. And then I'll reply to it after I receive that with some notes on your outline. Because I want you to have a good, strong outline before you really get into writing your full project. Now, again, this is where you're going to eventually write your project deliverable, meaning the thing you're creating for the project, the technical report. We will use Google Docs to publish a report online and link it to our Open Lab course site, which will give you experience with more advanced features of Google Docs and Open Lab /WordPress. And again, we're going to discuss this in a future lecture. I just want to give you a heads up of where we're going with all this, about why I'm having you use Google Docs. Now, for your research on the technical report, I want to point out places where you can begin doing research that you can quote and use in your technical report, and what sources are more useful for you to learn about your topic but aren't sources that I want you to be quoting or citing in your project, meaning that they are only for your background learning. Like, you read them, you learn from them, maybe get some keywords to add to your technical report research database, right? That help you track down additional sources. And also in these things, you might find sources that are linked that are things you can find through our library's website or these other sources that I'm pointing out here. So first off, acceptable vetted sources for your research reports, quotes, and citations. This is the research that is going to inform and support what you write in your research report. And when I say vetted, what that means is that these are sources that have been evaluated and approved as being accurate sources of information that you can rely on for your project. So these include ebooks and articles from library.citytech.cuny.edu. Those are things you can access from off campus that you just log into the library's resources using your CUNY First username and password, that you can read ebooks online and make notes from, and articles that you can read online or download and also make notes from. Finding quotes that you can cite from both of these types of sources. You may also use ebooks that are available through archive.org. Archive.org is essentially an online library. It's a repository of our online digital heritage, but it's also a vast holding of digitized books from libraries that you can read online for free. Some of them you can simply download as PDFs or in other formats. Others you have to read online, in which case you create a free archive.org username and password. It doesn't cost anything. It's just like getting a New York Library library card, completely free to use. And then also NewYorkTimes.com. If I didn't mention this before in a class, I think I did, but I just want to reiterate in case you're not familiar with this. Every City Tech student can get a free subscription, an online subscription to the New York Times, so that you can read the New York Times online through a web browser or through the app on your phone. All you have to do is go to nytimes.com/passes, Passes, passes. And then it's going to ask you to create an account using your email address. Use your City Tech email address. And what that does is it allows them to verify that you are a student at City Tech. You give them a password that you want to use. It should be something unique, and your name. And I think all they do is they send an email to your City Tech email address. You click that link to verify your account, and then you log in to nytimes.com. There's a link in the upper right hand corner for sign in. Click that, log in with your email address and that password you made up, and you'll have full access to the New York Times. And there's a great search feature on the New York Times that you can search not only the recent stuff that's published in the newspaper, but you have access to their entire history online that you can quote and cite from. Especially might be useful for background information on the topic that you selected. So these are the acceptable sources that you may use for the project. Now, sources that I want you to be looking at right now to aid your background understanding of the topic you've selected, but not to use as sources that you're going to quote from in your project. I can't be more explicit in that. There's this separation from what's acceptable and what is not acceptable to quote from in your project. But that doesn't mean they can't be useful. And these useful sources to help in your learning on the topic include wikipedia.org, wired.com, which is a long-running technology magazine. There's arstechnica.com, which is a long-running blog on technology and science. You can also do Google searches, other web searches using Bing, DuckDuckGo, others, etc. And then also social media. Not only social media like Twitter and Facebook, but you also try Reddit and other places. The idea here is that these sources aren't vetted necessarily in the same way as these sources are. Okay, so that's why we're not going to be quoting from them. But these sources can be incredibly useful for our learning about different topics, the topics that you selected for your technical report. Wikipedia.org is an aggregator of information. It's a place that pulls information from other sources. If you look at the bottom of any Wikipedia article, there's a list of references. Those references can be beneficial to your research because some of them are going to be things that you can find through the library's resources or at archive.org. So those will be things that you can follow to do more research. But just for your purposes right now, read an entry on wikipedia.org relevant to your topic, to learn from it, to get some of that background information that'll help you build your keywords list and give you some background historical information about the topic that you've selected. Now, what we will be doing after in our next week's class, we'll look more into these acceptable vetted sources. But for right now, I want you to focus on these sources simply to learn more about your topic, to get that information in your head. because that education that you provide for yourself by reading in these sources about your topic will be vastly influential and useful to you when you actually begin doing research here in these vetted sources. Because if you don't know about your topic well enough, it's incredibly difficult to do research. You need to know a little bit about it before you dive in to these vetted sources. So that's why right now I want you to focus on learning about your topic with some of these general sources like Wikipedia, just doing Google searches, looking around on social media, and trying some of these magazines or online blogs that might have something relevant to your topic to look at. And so that's going to bring us to this week's weekly writing assignment. And this is going to get to the heart of some background on the topic that you've selected. So I want you to read and take notes about your topic, primarily focusing on the learning sources that we just discussed. You may use the vetted sources too, but primarily focus on these guys down here, Wikipedia, Wired.com, ArsTechnica.com. As you're doing that reading, you can make notes in your own words. You can write down keywords that come up and add those keywords to the top of your technical report research database. But right now you're trying to learn about the topic. And I say here that this stage of learning about your topic will help you better understand the topic and aid you in doing better research in the vetted sources that we'll talk about next week. Now, what I want you to do is, after you've read and learned about your topic, now this is something you got to invest time in, okay? You can't just spend 5 minutes and expect to know about the topic. As I've said before, our class is a 3-hour class. The bare minimum of investment has to be that 3 hours, including the lecture. And then outside of those 3 hours, you're expected to be spending twice as much time on your homework. So if you're not investing the time and the energy to do this right, don't expect to produce the kinds of quality work that's going to give you a grade you want. So it is imperative that with this type of work, you're investing time and energy into doing this kind of research. And this research is self-motivated. I can't give you like a list of things like go read this and go read that, and then wait for you to do that and follow with the next step. You have to be motivated to do this on your own. You have to want to learn this. And you ought to, because this is your career we're talking about. This is your education that's going to enable you to pursue the career that you want. So you do this reading, you do this background research, and with that knowledge that you put into your head, I want you to write a 250-word memo. So again, remember, a memo at the top, you need to have to me, Professor Ellis, from your name, subject, I give you a subject here, brief history of X. Replace X with the topic you selected, and then a date. The date can be next week's due date, which is going to be October 27th. Okay, so you got all week to work on this. And then in the body of that memo, write in your own words discussing the background and history of your selected topic. While you should have taken notes on your reading, put them away during this exercise. Focus only on what you remember. That way everything that you write down will be in your own words. I don't want to see any quotes in this memo. I want it to come from you based on what you've learned about the topic. Conclude your memo with a list of at least 5 key words that you will use in your ongoing research. So those 5 key words, like, you should have already listed out here in your research database. And that memo, you can actually write into your research database file. I don't care. You're going to copy just that part, your research memo that I'm talking about. Just copy that memo part, not the whole document, not your whole research database. Just copy and paste that memo into a comment on this week's weekly writing assignment on OpenLab. Okay? And again, remember with your weekly writing assignments, just click weekly writing assignment, comma, week 7, scroll to the bottom, you'll see the comment box, copy and paste your work there at the bottom, click post comment, wait a minute for it to post, and then boom, you'll see your name and avatar next to your writing. And then you'll know it's turned in. All right, so that's this week's weekly writing assignment. You do that background research and reading, make some notes, but put your notes away and then write that memo, about 250 words, a little bit of background and history of the topic you selected. Now, you can recycle some of this writing whenever you begin writing your technical report. That's totally fine. But for right now, this is just showing me you're doing your due diligence to learn about this topic that you selected for your research report. Now, in addition to the weekly writing assignment, as I mentioned before, there's also some homework that's going to help you get started on your project in a strong way. And what I want you to do is review those sample technical reports in David McMurray's online technical writing textbook. These guys right here. I'll give you a link to them again underneath this week's lecture. And then in your English 1133 technical report Google Doc, write what you think is the best outline for your topic. So like here where I wrote this sample outline, abstract, and then I began Roman numerals after abstract, because the abstract's not really part of your document. The references are not part of your document in the sense that this outline is the body of your document. So abstract is first, then Roman numeral 1, introduction, Roman numeral 2, something, Roman numeral 3, etc., down to the last Roman numeral should be your conclusion. Now, in your outline, you might include like subsections. We might say maybe definition of the topic. B, history of the topic. Right? That's okay too. You might include that. So I don't want you to think it only has to be Roman numerals. You can include subsections within the major sections. But after you've written this out, abstract or references with the body, main sections Roman numerals, and then subsections letters, and even your subsections can have sub-subsections and normal numbers. So like A1 something to something else, like that. Okay, so after you've written that out, you'll want to copy it and then start a professional email to me. That's jellis@citytech.cuny.edu. Subject can be English 1133 technical report outline, and then write a professional email to me. Dear Professor Ellis, I'm including my outline for my technical report on, and say what your technical report is, paste your outline below it, and then underneath that say, can you give me some feedback on my outline above? Best, your name. Sincerely, your name. Cheers, your name. And then I'll reply to your email with some notes about, like, if I think everything's fine, or if I got some specific suggestions about making the outline stronger. Because I want you to have a good outline going into this research, okay? So you have this homework to do so that I can give you feedback on your outline. And then you also have this weekly writing assignment, which is going to be giving you some background information on your project. My suggestion is to do the weekly writing assignment first so that you do that background research that'll help with your thinking on your outline. So do the weekly writing assignment first, get that posted, and then write your outline and send a copy to me so that I can give you feedback on it, okay? Then in next week's class, we'll talk more about using those vetted sources now that you've got an outline to work with. And we'll get into the real research where you're going to be populating each of those sections that you're writing about in your outline. That's why we got to have a good outline so you know what to exactly be writing about and responding to in your technical report. But as I said earlier, each student's outline will likely be unique based on the topic they've selected. That's why when we look at these examples on the David McMurray Technical Writing textbook online, each of these are so different, and you'll find that out too when you look at the cerebral palsy and the atmospheric carbon dioxide reports. Each of these have different types of organization. So look at each of them, do that research to see like how they're organized and get ideas about how to organize your own outline for your project. Okay? So again, weekly writing assignment first to learn more about your project and to report on what you've learned. Then you can work on that outline and email a copy to me so that I can give you some feedback on it. Okay? Now, if you got questions about any of this, my email address again is jellis@citytech.cuny.edu. I got office hours on Wednesday from 3 to 5 p.m. The link is on our Open Lab site to Google Hangouts and on the syllabus. If there's any questions you have about any of these assignments, let me know. I'll be looking forward to receiving your job application portfolios, which I expect to be coming in the next couple of days. But if you need more time on that, make sure you just reach out to me to let me know that you'll be turning it in late. Because again, my goal is everybody does well in the class, so if that needs you to get a little bit extra time on something, do the professional thing, let me know, and make that ask. That way I know to be expecting your work late, and then once you've turned it in, you follow up with an additional email to let me know, hey, Professor Ellis, I just turned in X. Can you check it off for me? And I'll be happy to do that. Because I want you to do your best work in the class, and I know that times are still difficult and challenging for all of us in different ways. So let's work together to make this happen for your success, okay? Got my email address, you know my office hours. So, good luck with everything. I just want to encourage everybody, to stay healthy, take care of yourselves, remember to mask up, vaccinate. I just got my flu shot the other day. You may consider getting your flu shot too, just another layer of protection to make sure that isn't something else that can knock you out of play during the semester. Get plenty of rest, eat well, take care of yourself and others, okay? And I'll talk to you all again next week. Take care.